to the Bank On It podcast, episode 3, brought to you by the Appalachian newspapers, regional sports editor Randy White, Cory, Vance behind the camera. We just want to take a few minutes to say Happy Veterans Day to all of the active duty and retired military men and women out there. Thanks for always keeping us safe, and thanks for the ultimate sacrifice for serving our country. We appreciate it. This weather that's going on right now, pretty much a microcosm of my entire weekend as a sports fan.
It's kind of fitting. Saturday we came in and watched the UK-UT game. That's what started it all. I mean, what a miserable performance by UK over the weekend. We talked about, even though, it's a tough place to win at UT, not knowing if they'll win or not. Yeah. They just didn't show up, though.
They didn't show up, and the same, it wouldn't be a UK season if we didn't lose 2 games in a row. So I guess part of it was that familiar feeling that most of us have as UK fans. But man, I mean, our offense just having a hard time. Benny Snell looks beat up at this point in the season. You like to see A.J. Rose get a few more carries and maybe take a little bit of the load off, but only 2 running backs in the SEC is tough. We're a better team than Tennessee this year.
I think so.
But, I mean,
we didn't play like it Saturday.
No, we didn't play like it Saturday. And the offense, again, I mean, I don't think sometimes I think the play calling doesn't exactly help us, but we just really came out flat, and we just got flat out outplayed. And it was a tough game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, just being so one-dimensional for them. I mean, that's the thing we say over and over and over. And, the defense is good, but, when they're always on the field, you don't know how good they can be because eventually they're going to get tired. But Tennessee, I mean, you got to give those guys credit. They came out and they were ready to play. It was a big game for them. That's why they always win at UT. I mean, those guys came out ready to play, and Kentucky just didn't. I mean, when you got 9 and 10 guys in the box play after play and the quarterback can't make the throws to make the defense honest, it kind of makes it easy for the opposing defenses to stop UK.
Yeah, it really does. And unless we can come out and just control the clock and control the tempo right out of the gate, if we get down against anybody, we've said it time and time again, we're going to have a hard time throwing our way back into it just because that's not our offense right now. Outside of Lynn Bowden, I don't know that we have that really over-the-top guy that can take the top off the defense. And Benny Snell, man, I almost feel bad for him at this point. He has taken an absolute beating this year. 20 carries, 81 yards. I mean, he ran hard. It was just,
There's nothing there. There's no holes. There's no gaps. There's no lanes. There's not much he can do. I mean, he's running and trying to break 2 and 3 tackles, and there's nobody there to open things up for him.
Yeah, and he's a between the tackles guy. If he has to bounce it outside, that's not his game. And especially at this point in the season, it's tough. So, hopefully Kentucky can kind of put it back together. We've got Middle Tennessee State at Kroger Field next week, so. You like for them to come out and see them look a little better, gearing up for the last game of the season at Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, you can't look ahead of Middle Tennessee State. I mean, I think they're 7-2 as well, I believe. I mean, Kentucky opens as a 14-point favorite in that one. Got to come out and play, though. Yeah. I mean, if we don't score again, offense don't get going, it could be another close game. I mean, until they respond after these 2 losses, you just don't know. And so far, they've not responded.
Yeah, they looked beat up after the Georgia game, came into Tennessee looking flat. Hopefully they come in Middle Tennessee. Maybe they revamp a little bit of the play call. The play calling bothered me after I went back and watched the Tennessee game. So hopefully we can come out this week against Middle Tennessee State, get a win, get back on the right track. This still has been one of the funnest Kentucky football seasons in recent memory, and I've enjoyed it. And hopefully it's just a peek into what we might be able to have next year. We've got a couple of guys coming in. Just signed a 4-star JUCO receiver today, I think, and hopefully we can get some more downfield threats and really have even better offense to fit such a good defense this year.
And last thing about UK football, I mean, got Louisville in the last game of the season. Louisville just fired Petrino. So we can't be looking ahead to that game, because if we look ahead to that game, Middle Tennessee could sneak up. And you never know, that could light a fire into Louisville after that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, the last 2 games both winnable, but neither one of them at this point I would say are a sure thing.
Yeah, you see it time and time again. Coach gets fired and players come out and they either give up on the season or they come out playing some inspired football. So hopefully Kentucky gets back on the right track. Going to Kentucky basketball.
Another hard one. I mean, we talked about last week afterwards, after the game, and again, another team that was not ready to play just didn't show up. I mean, and give a lot of credit to Duke. They came out on fire. I mean, that recruiting class they had is just, my goodness. I mean, that's our next level type of recruiting class. And again, you don't know how good Kentucky's recruiting class is this year, and I think last year's might have been overhyped.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. And then going into the Southern Illinois game, I mean, we just were close with them up until the last, 8 or 10 minutes of the second half, that we let them hang around. I mean, this is the way it kind of goes with these Kentucky teams. I mean, we're not going to know who this team is until at least halfway through the season. You just hope these guys can hit their stride at some point and start playing well together, figure out how to play together, figure out the rotations, and hopefully we can make some noise. The SEC is going to be tougher than usual in basketball this year. Just looking at the box score for the game, I mean, you had a couple of guys that had pretty decent games. I mean, Nick Richards snatched down 19 boards, almost had a double-double with 8 points. So, I mean, there are positives to be taken away from that game, but it's tough for most Kentucky fans to accept that these teams are going to come out and it's going to take them a little bit of time to get it together.
Well, and the thing, too, is you look at the Duke recruits. I mean, the ceiling for that team, some people say they can't play much better, but I kind of think it's one of their first games of the season as well. I think that team can keep getting better and better. And that's one of those teams that nobody wants to see rolling around in March if they keep improving. I mean, the ceiling for that team is really high. Right now, you don't know where the ceiling is for this Kentucky team. A lot of questions. So, to me, until they figure out the point guard play and they can figure out some inside stuff, some of the guys rolls inside on the box, it's going to be tough treading for them. I mean, right now, I think their early positives are Keldon Johnson's play and some of the other guys, younger guys play as well. So. A lot of that's, it's going to take time, though. I mean, I'm not too worried about this Kentucky team just right now.
Yeah, they're going to be okay, and we'll see where they're at come, February. I think that's around SEC tournament time, halfway through the season, three-quarter way. I mean, that's when we'll really know what we have. We know we have a super deep team with lots of talent on it. It's just about them being able to put it together and going on a run. So hopefully they'll be able to do that. I have no doubt that Cal will have those guys ready once SEC tournament. And our non-conference schedule is tough. I mean, we've got a few games here down the stretch before we see UNC and Louisville. So, we've got a few games to kind of get it together and see if we can get the guys clicking. So.
Yeah, and just speaking of a hard fan weekend, being Bengals fans, there's another team that didn't come out ready to play. I mean, two games this year against two Super Bowl contenders, and both games we just got outclassed.
Just beat to death this weekend against the Saints, coming off a bye week too, man. I mean, you hate to see the Bengals come off a bye week and go out and have a performance like that. Now, that being said, the Saints are maybe the class of the NFC. At the moment, I mean, with the Rams, but wow, 51 points.
Yeah, I mean, it was so bad that Fox quit showing the game in the third quarter. I mean, that's pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, that's how bad that game was. Fired the defensive coordinator today, Terrell Austin. Marvin Lewis is going to take the defensive play calling over. Maybe that will help out some on the defense, but I don't know. I mean, the defense has been bad all season, and it seems like we got some good pieces back there.
I mean, you certainly hope so. I mean, at this point, I've been a Marvin Lewis supporter for a lot of years, but I think we're about 4 years past time to let's move on, Bengals. Let's move on, Bengals fans. It's time to move on from Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, 17 years without really winning a playoff game. I mean, you got to give him credit for, getting this franchise back on track and becoming a winner year in, year out. But no playoff wins. I mean, That's tough.
Yeah, it's the end of the rope. I think it's time for maybe to get a fresh face in there and see what they can do. So hopefully we'll see how the rest of the season plays out with Marvin Lewis making all the defensive play calls. Hopefully they can improve. You know, I'm always rooting for the Bengals to improve, but I think it's just time for them to look at maybe somebody else out there that could come in and just have a fresh start with this franchise.
Yeah, and you know, we'll talk about some local stuff here before we start talking about high school football. UPike basketball over the weekend lost 2 straight. Football lost their final game, could have had 7 wins. So, you know, being a local guy here supporting UPike, Cincinnati, UPike, tough weekend for sports. I mean, seeing those losses. But, you know, with UPike basketball, there's no worry right now. Tough MSC, SSAC conference challenge there. 2 good teams they failed to. Still got a couple players out, players hurt, you know, trying to find their way back in. So I'm not too concerned about Kelly Wells right now. Going on the road in Georgia, you know, those things are going to happen early on in the season.
Well, and it's very, very early on for that kind of thing. And you know as well as anybody that the coaching will be there.
Oh, yeah.
He'll have those guys ready, and that's a team to keep your eye out. And go out and see. Go out and see this UPike team. They play over at the Expo Center. I mean, they're going to have lots of home games, so everybody try to get out and see UPike this season and watch some good basketball right here in your own backyard.
Yeah, and the football team, they lost their senior night. Finished the season with a 6-4 record. Cumberland's was a really good team, you know, top 15 team in the nation. No shame in that loss. Good crowd out that night on a cold Saturday night. People were out supporting UPike. They fought pretty good in the first half, and Cumberland's kind of overcame them there late, and you know, for Al Holland Jr. there in UPike, 6-4, not the finish they were looking for, but still, it's a pretty good season after a tough start. I mean, if they would have got off to a little better start, maybe this team is looking at a playoff run.
Bad news over the weekend. I guess if there's a silver lining, the silver lining is the Pikeville Panthers' huge win over Lane Camp this weekend in the high school playoffs. 55-8, and they got a tough Williamsburg team coming to Pikeville this coming weekend. Thoughts on the Lynn Camp win?
Yeah, I got there in the second quarter of that game. I covered Shelby Valley and Pikeville Friday night. Got there to Pikeville. Pikeville was rolling. Connor Roberts taking care of business. I mean, the kid is just unbelievable. When I got there, I think it was 32 to nothing, something like that, and they got a late score there right before halftime. Connor Roberts with a minute and a half took them 60-some yards down the field, scores easily before halftime. The kid is just playing unbelievable football right now, but so is the whole team. I mean, you look at a kid like Jesse Sparks, kid who plays defensive end, has 91 rushing yards as a defensive end, and when he's playing running back. So, I mean, you just look at that team, and what they're doing is kind of incredible right now. I mean, they really look poised for a deep run. I mean, I know we're already in region championship weekend, but this team looks really ready to go.
Well, the road definitely doesn't get any easier for them with Williamsburg coming to town. That should be an absolute barn burner of a game this weekend right here in Pikeville. Paintsville against Nichols County, another big win, 42-18. Paintsville moving on.
Yeah, Paintsville, that sets up a rematch with them in Raceland from last year. You know, Paintsville last year was a favorite to beat Raceland in the region championship game and make it to the state semis. They hosted again last year. That Raceland came in and upset them then. So that's going to be definitely on Paintsville's mind coming in this year, knowing that, hey, we were in this same spot last year. We didn't go out and take care of business. So, you know, that gives them a little extra motivation. And you know, they've got one win over at Raceland this year, 6-0 early in the regular season. This is going to be a really good matchup, a really interesting matchup. I mean, the two teams know each other well. It should be a heck of a game. That Paintsville defense is playing really well right now.
Tough task getting 2 wins over a team in 1 year, especially a team like Raceland.
Yeah. You know, and that would set up the winner of Pikeville. Williamsburg would face the winner of Paintsville Raceland the following week, the Friday night after Thanksgiving, in the state semifinals. And, you know, Williamsburg, we didn't talk a whole lot about them, but they put up points. I mean, they'll score the ball against anybody, but so can Pikeville. So that right there creates a really interesting matchup. What defense can make the plays? Pikeville's defense has speed everywhere. So can Pikeville make enough stops against Williamsburg, or can Williamsburg stop Pikeville at all? I mean, that's some of the questions coming in. I mean, and then you look at Paintsville Racing. That one, that's probably going to be a defensive barn burner, coming off of a 6-0 win early on. So one game it looks like there could be points scored everywhere, and then the other game is points might be hard to come by.
Yeah, Williamsburg moving on over Hazard seems like, was that a bit of an upset, or is that
That's one of those games that I don't know a whole lot about Williamsburg other than they score a lot of points. Got a really good quarterback, some good receivers, a couple of nice running backs, but it's one of those teams I don't know a whole lot about. I figured Hazard had a good shot to go in there and win that one. Williamsburg jumped out, I think, 21-0 on them. Hazard made a comeback, and then late in the fourth quarter there, Williamsburg just put it out of hand. But to me, it's probably a better matchup for Pikeville because Hazard has such a big line up front, and the games that Pikeville's kind of struggled in earlier this year have been against big defensive lines, offensive lines. So very intriguing, but probably a slight upset, I would say, Williamsburg winning over Hazard.
And just on the other side, you still got Beechwood hanging around, moving on, just blowing people out, blowing Kentucky Country Day out 50-6 this past Friday. So they're still hanging around, going up against Frankfort this week. So there's still some tough teams hanging around in single A, but with Pikeville and Paintsville still in it, you definitely wish them the best of luck. Love to see. But what a big matchup that would be if Pikeville and Paintsville were to meet in that. That would be the state semifinal.
It'd be state semifinals. Last time they did it was Cash Daniels' senior year when he was Mr. Football set out. Pikeville wins that game, goes on to win the state championship in 2015. It's always a fun game when those two teams play. I mean, the last few years, it's been one of the best games in the mountains year in, year out. I mean, it's one of those ones you circle, and then when playoffs just gives extra excitement to that game. So if that comes true fruition and those two teams play each other, that's one to be a fun one to look forward to.
Well, I know this is the busiest time of year for you guys, but it's got to be one of the funnest times of year just going around seeing all this high school football.
Playoff football is, that makes the whole season. It's the funnest part of the whole season because now they're playing for something. Regular season, you're preparing for the playoffs. Now you see the teams what they've been preparing for, and to see the kids go out and execute and have success. So, that's the kind of things that we like writing about more often than just a regular season game where it might be meaningless, or I won't say meaningless, but not as much on the line.
It's not win or go home every week. So
it's a good test to see these kids out there performing in critical crunch time situations. It's a lot of fun. But moving on to 2A, we can move on. And Shelby Valley, they didn't have the showing they wanted last week. Come out. They had Lexington Christian Academy, got beat 43-0. I was at that one early on. Lexington Christian kind of jumped out 10-0. Second quarter, Valley puts together a drive. They get to the Lexington Christian 10, 15-yard line. Can't find a way to score. Lexington Christian gets the ball back right before halftime. They find a way to score on a big play. That's pretty much the momentum, and Shelby Valley couldn't recover after that. So it's one of those things you hate to see Shelby Valley lose, but they had a great season, finished the season with 10 wins. So
yeah, definitely. Congrats to Shelby Valley, man. A gutty performance in that first round win over Middlesboro, and you love to see him come out on top against Lexington Christian. But they had a great season, and the other thing that jumps out at me in Double A is Somerset. So Somerset, Lexington Christian.
Yep.
Big matchup this weekend.
District rivals playing for the region championship.
Beating Danville, Somerset.
Danville, last year was Danville's year. They were loaded the last 2 or 3 years. A little bit of a rebuild. Somerset kind of built for this year, tried to make their run this year and, defense oriented again. They're loaded on defense. So it's going to be hard for anybody in 2A to score on them. So they got a really good chance to win that region championship and then keep on playing after that.
So, do you look at Mayfield as the favorite in Double A?
If I was banking on it, I would say Mayfield or Christian Academy of Louisville, probably your two favorites on the other side. Somerset's the favorite on this side, I would imagine. Anything can happen up there. A lot of those are big rival games that are used to meeting each other. So, but if I'm guessing, I would say until somebody beats Beechwood, I'm going to say Beechwood's the favorite in 2A.
All right, moving on to 3A. Or anything else you want to talk about 2A?
2A is good with me. We can move on. The thing that jumps out in 3A is Belfry and Lex Cath last week. I mean, look at that final score of 55-51.
Yeah.
I mean, just a shootout of a game. Lex Cath, quarterback Bo Allen, just threw the ball over the field. Belfry responded. 558 total yards, all of them on the ground.
Jeez.
Yeah. Sophomore Isaac Dixon had 270-plus yards of rushing. So, I mean, just an incredible performance by Belfry.
Over 500 yards rushing.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a pick, 6. He was in the end zone. High school is going to count as 99 yards. He's probably 2-3 yards deep in the end zone. So that was one of the big factors. Lexington Catholic had the lead at that point. He got the pick 6, gave Belfry the lead, and they kind of held on after that. But, I mean, Belfry can play defense too. I mean, you look at that score and see 55-51, so there's not much defense. Belfry's a pretty good defensive team. But Lex Catholic, I mean, with the quarterback and the receivers they got, they're going to score points against anybody.
Gave them a scare. Gave them a real
absolutely.
scare.
I mean, I think Belfry probably knew that it was going to be a tough game. I bet they probably didn't know it was going to be a shootout like that, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was so you got a clash of the Titans kind of with Belfry going up against Boyle County this weekend.
Two traditional powerhouse teams year in, year out. Doesn't get much deeper in tradition anywhere in the state than Boyle County and Belfry. So Boyle County's got to make the trip up here. Anytime Belfry's at home in the playoffs, you got to like their chances. Even though Boyle County is, they're defending state champion, they're loaded again. It's going to be a tough matchup. Talk about loaded again. They just get the ball out quick. Quarterback, receivers. They're very balanced offensively. I think they got 2 running backs with about 800 rushing yards each. They got receivers, some D1 potential receivers there. So it's going to be another interesting matchup. It doesn't get any easier for Belfry Friday night.
Definitely not. And just the winner of that game will play the winner of Bell County at Corbin.
Yeah, another interesting game there. I mean, since John Dudley Hilton went back to Bell County, he's steadily built that program back up. Corbin has been, one of the classes on the east side of the state with Belfry here the last few years. So, I mean, that should be interesting again.
LaRue County going to E-Town, and then Central playing Russell in the rest of 3A.
Yep.
Anything else you want to touch on 3A?
No, I mean, I think that right there locally is our thing there with 3A's Belfry. I mean, Belfry's the team to watch in 3A around here.
Definitely.
And when you move on to 4A, Johnson Central.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Matney's got those guys playing. Picked up a big win Friday night. They're going to host Ashland again this Friday. Two district teams they know each other well. It's going to be a great little football game Friday night.
Oh, no big deal. Johnson Central just put up 50 again.
Yeah, and they do that week in, week out, and a lot of people don't talk about Johnson Central for their offense, but they're like Belfry. They can run for 500 yards in any given game.
Yeah, they've only scored 105 points through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. No big deal.
No, they're not ready to play this time of year. They've not went to 3 straight state championship games for a reason.
Yeah, so Johnson Central playing Ashland Paul Blazer, and then up at the top you got Knox and Franklin County going at it at Knox Central.
Yep.
The no upsets, really no upsets in 4A. Anything else you want to touch on 4A?
No, I mean just Johnson Central. If you want to see a good football team play some powerhouse football, there is nothing better in the mountains to watch than Johnson Central. So if you're interested in that style, get out there Friday night and you'll see a good game, and they'll be ready to play.
Definitely. Moving on to 5A. There was an upset somewhere, right?
6A, there was an upset. 5A, I think everything shook out the way it was supposed to. Nothing major going on in 5A right now. We don't really have any local teams.
It's all chalk.
All of our teams, Letcher Central, Prairie Central, they've already been eliminated. So 5A, local on a local aspect, has not been a whole lot going on there. So, but I mean, it's one of those things. Highlands is moving on. They've been down the last few years, and they're making a little run this year. Owensboro, South Warren up the top. Fern Creek, South Oldham. So And then you look at Covcath, Highlands, and then Pulaski and Southwestern. So 5A is kind of shaking out the way you would think it would have.
Yeah, I was ahead of myself. If Scott County over Frederick
Now,
Douglass,
that's in 6A. Now that we can move on and talk about that game if you want.
Big upset.
Oh yeah, and there's some controversy in that game. Frederick Douglass scored there late, going for a 2-point conversion. Some controversial calls may have changed the outcome of that game. A lot of people thought Frederick Douglass would win that game, just being in their second year. Had a chance to. It was a tough game throughout, and some controversy at the end of that one.
28-27, Scott County moving on. They're going to play Simon Kenton at Simon Kenton this weekend. Madison Central moving on, playing Connor.
Yep.
Pretty much all chalk across the board other than that big upset of Scott County. Frederick Douglass, a lot of people's favorite to win 6A.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that they had a shot to win it. To me, it's hard to say it's an upset when Scott County beats anybody in 6A. They're always in the mix there. But, it's a slight upset. A lot of people thought Frederick Douglass would beat them. They beat them in the regular season. It's one of those games that it was a close one in the second round. You don't see that often. And then you look at the top side, you got Trinity and St. X moving on, Mel. That's a big game Friday night, St. X and Mel. 6A is interesting as well.
Yeah.
Just kind of talk about playoff atmosphere. Right now is the time of year, I guess it's the most fun to play. Just kind of talk about, the difference between regular season and playoffs, intensity level kind of pick up or what?
Yeah, it picks up pretty good in practice, and we get after it with everything. I don't know. And just knowing it's our last, postseason as seniors. It's just we want to be intense and just. We know Ashland's a good team, so they're going to come out there ready to play. They're going to be out there ready to play. So.
Yeah, just kind of talk about, the defensive line up there. You guys kind of get after the ball. First time y'all played Ashland defensive line, got to the quarterback, that seemed to be a big factor in that game. Just talk about how important up front is on both sides of the ball for Johnson Central. It seems like line play, both sides of the ball, is really, something that is a major factor week in, week out, regardless who the opponent is.
Oh yeah, the game is won at the line of scrimmage. Whichever team controls the line of scrimmage is going to win the game. How I feel.
Yeah, just kind of talk about playing with each other and how cool that is. Both of y'all, you look at the stat lines. It's I think one of y'all has 87 tackles, 6 or 7 sacks. The other's got 85. Like right there at each other. Just talk about how cool that is, knowing that y'all get those. Line up there and play and go out there and make plays.
It's always been a competition between us, just being twins, growing up together, and it's fun playing right beside my brother because I know he's got my back, and we're all a family on the defense, and just our whole team in general, we're all a big family, so I know we all have each other's backs no matter what.
Yeah, just kind of talk about, the rest of the defense behind you. Got some really good, talented players behind you. You got Devin Johnson at the linebacker, you got Priest and some of those other guys. Just talk about knowing that there's guys behind you that maybe if somebody doesn't get to the quarterback or make the first tackle, there's somebody coming.
Oh yeah, we put a lot of trust in our DBs and our linebackers as well. We know that, if we screw up, they got our back. They probably want to have a man, and they're going to do their job, getting the ball. Our DBs, hey, you said we have whatever. Our stats come from them. They cover them, the wide receivers so well. So we're able to get back there that much quicker.
Last thing, and I'll let y'all go. Just kind of talk about the postseason play. I know every year y'all usually playing these big games, these big atmosphere. How big is that, having that experience under your belt and going forward and staying focused week to week? I know y'all probably got championships aspirations, but is it the experience there just to take each game as it comes, I guess?
Yeah, we both we both played in the 2016 season. That's when we won, so, and just Ashland in general. Ashland's always a big game for us, and it's a very exciting game. The whole community gets into it, and it's just a big week for Johnson Central football.
All right, just kind of talk about the season you've had this year. Sitting out last year, getting injured in that first game, that had to be tough. Just talk about how big it was for you coming back this year and having the season you've been having. I think you've got around 1,700 rushing yards on the year. Just talk about how big that is for you. Just overcoming that injury from last year.
I've had to put a lot of work in the weight room after my surgery, and Our line, they're blocking great right now, and hopefully they'll keep that up.
Yeah, just kind of talk about how hard it was last year, senior team, going to that state championship game, knowing that, you should be out there helping them play and be out there coming off that sophomore year where you named MVP. I mean, was that some motivation this year to kind of work and get back to where you were?
Yeah, I feel like if I was up there, that I think we would have had a different result in that game.
Yeah, just kind of, you mentioned a little bit, but just talk about how big the line play is. It seems like Johnson Central are known for offensive, defensive line play. I mean, just talk about knowing when you go out there that there's going to be holes to run through, you're going to have blockers. I mean, as a run back, what does that do for your confidence? Is it just kind of, increase confidence every time you get the ball?
Yeah, it makes our job a lot easier, having the linemen up there, making the holes for us to run through.
Yeah, just kind of talk about, you got some really talented players around you on offense as well. Can you, talk about the job Riley Priest has done at quarterback and maybe, Devin Johnson coming in and being a compliment to you at that running back spot?
Yeah, Devin, he's a great back too. He had to step up last year and fill in a spot when I went out. And then Riley, he stepped up his freshman year. And then sophomore year we won it, and he was in there at quarterback.
Yeah, just kind of talk about the defense as well. I mean, it seems like your all's defense gets after it. I mean, knowing that offense that you're all going to have a chance to go score points, but knowing that, hey, when we're on the sidelines, these guys behind us on defense, they might come in and kind of make some stops, help us win these games. Just talk about how big that is.
Yeah, we've had Braxton Bentley come in. This is pretty much his first year, and he's done real well for us. And then we've got Cody. He's been out there, and then our two linebackers, they've done pretty good for us too.
Just kind of talk, last thing, and I'll let you go, just kind of talk about the playoffs. I mean, week in, week out, just talk about the focus level of this team. And I mean, is the mindset just going out taking care of business one game at a time? You got Ashland up Friday night. I mean, just kind of talk about the mindset of the playoff run here for Johnson Central.
Just try to get past Ashland.
All right. Just kind of talk about, playoff time. I mean, this team, it seems like, from the beginning of the season has kept getting better and better. I mean, the intensity and focus levels there. I mean, just talk about how this team has kind of improved throughout the season.
Our goal every year is to peak at the right time, to get a little better every game, and then come playoffs to be at our best. And you can't always guarantee that your formula is going to work out, but that's how we build it. Our practice plan, our schedule, everything, we try to peak come playoffs. And it seems like we've gotten a little bit better each game this year. We've been beset by injuries, probably the most number of injuries that we've ever had. Not that serious of injuries, but just it's been amazing how many injuries we've had this year. And our kids have been resilient. They've overcome, and that's what I like about mountain kids. Mm-hmm. Mountain kids are tough. They're used to dealing with hardships, and mountain kids just in general overcome. And that's kind of our motto: to overcome all the odds, to overcome all the obstacles, to achieve at a great level.
Yeah, and kind of speaking right into that, Joe Jackson, that name comes to mind. I mean, suffered that injury last year, coming off a 2,000-yard season. The way he's bounced back this year, I mean, that's just kind of incredible, and I think that story needs to be heard, and people need to see that. Just kind of talk about that resiliency and that toughness he showed to bounce back and have the season that he's had this year.
I think Joe typifies. He's a great example of these mountain kids. A lot of running backs would have probably called it quits. He was the MVP of the state championship game 2 years ago, and then he had a devastating injury in the first game last year. And I think a lot of people would have hung it up. But Joe has worked hard, he's come back, and he's having a great senior year. But I think you don't have to go very far to find an example of that mountain toughness.
Yeah, just kind of talk about the offensive and defensive lines. I mean, you're always one of those teams that it seems like everything starts up front. Just talk about how important that line play is for you guys.
Well, it really does. All the line play. we feel like that most games are won or lost in the trenches. And it certainly helps to have some really good skilled people, but we always start out with the line, and we try to build a strong line every year. And I think this year we had to replace several key starters, but I think we've had people step up, and that's what you do at some of these programs. You look and you say to a young man, okay, it's your turn. And most of the time they respond very well, and our kids have responded very well this year.
Yeah, just kind of talk about, coming up Friday, y'all know Ashland well, a big district game. Every time you're going to see them, it's going to be a tough, hard-fought game. I mean, just talk about the mindset of these kids, having to face them again after facing them in the regular season. I mean, how do you keep these kids focused and ready to go, or just the name Ashland alone just kind of do it because it's one of those games you got to show up and play?
Well, Ashland's always a tough opponent. I don't believe that there's another school in North or Eastern Kentucky that has a winning record against Ashland. So we're very proud of what we've accomplished in the past. I think I've coached against Ashland now 17 times and been very fortunate and blessed to win 14 out of those 17 times. And, maybe 13, I'm not sure. But they've got an excellent program. They're always very well coached. Their community puts a crazy amount of money in their program. It's the epitome of a big-time program. And they have wreaked havoc on Eastern Kentucky now for 75 years. So we're very proud of the fact that we can line up and go toe-to-toe with Ashland. And, most of the games come right down to the wire.